Son-in-Law of Discord by Disney Fanatic 2364. Chapter 17. Unleashed. I should have guessed. Trixie shouted as she tried to pinpoint the source of the earthquake. These places are always guarded by monsters. What kind of monster is it? Moonbeam asked excitedly. Whatever it is, Screwball said, I'm sure we can take it. I'm good with monsters. She really is, Mothball nodded, though he was still nervous. Yes. Mantis yelled. But this monster was chosen specifically for. He was interrupted as something burst out of the ground behind him, sending him and the other soldiers hurtling forward. Everyone gazed up in awe at the giant purple worm with a pink head. Whoa! Moonbeam grinned. A giant worm. The worm looked down at them with its beady black eyes and opened its head to reveal black tendrils coming out of a three-way mouth. Everyone covered their ears as it let out an ear-piercing scream. Don't worry, guys, Screwball said as she approached the worm. I've got this. Screwball, no. Twilight protested. That's a tatse worm. I don't care what he is. I'm sure he's not that bad. How do you know it's a him? Moonbeam called. Intuition. She patted the worm's purple scales. It's okay, buddy. Screwball. Twilight shouted again. Don't get too close. High above, the tatse worm sniffed. Ah, see. Screwball said. He's just cranky 'cause he has a cold. Oh no, Twilight uttered. Screwy. Get away before he. The tatse worm sneezed downwards, covering Screwball in green snot. Black. She gagged as she tried to wipe the mucus off. Okay, I admit that was rude, but that doesn't mean. She trailed off as her face suddenly became hot and she gripped her stomach as it churned. Mothball gasped as he watched his fiancée turn green, spots appearing all over her body. Ugh, she grunted as she started to wobble. I don't feel so good. Mothball rushed to her side before she could make contact with the floor. You all right? He asked. I feel sick, Screwball coughed. But I never get sick. I tried to tell you. Twilight yelled. Tatse worms carry a virus that is contagious to all magical beings, including chaotic ones. The only creature Chrysalis could find that could incapacitate Discord, Mantis explained. She especially didn't want him snooping around. How'd she even get a hold of a tatse worm, anyway? Well, you know how changelings can manipulate creatures with. Ahem. Captain Akari coughed. Shouldn't we concentrate on the beast here? As if on cue, the enormous worm screeched in their faces, showing off his tendrils. I may be sick, Screwball wheezed, but I can still. She clapped her hooves, but nothing happened. It's the sickness. Twilight exclaimed. It blocks your magic. Oh pooh, Screwball grunted. The tatse worm screamed again, demanding to be acknowledged. Mothball levitated Screwball out of the way while Trixie moved in front of Moonbeam. Okay, Trixie said. We've got 7. She glanced at the sick pony. Sorry. 6 magic users here and 1 giant worm. It shouldn't be too hard. They jumped as something else emerged from the ground behind them. They turned around to see another tatse worm. There are 2. Twilight hollered. What? Exclaimed Mantis, who was equally surprised. That's impossible. The Queen said there was only 1. Looks like he found a mate, Akari observed. Suddenly, a third worm sprang up beside Screwball and Mothball, this one half the size of the other 2. Mothball quickly rolled his fiancée into the far corner. And they got busy. Lieutenant Bombus marveled. We're screwed, Trixie murmured. Maybe not, Twilight said as the gears in her head went to work. If we all work together, we can take them out. General, you and I will take the alpha male, Captain Akari and, She paused at the lieutenant. I didn't catch your name. Lieutenant Bombus, at your service, Your Highness. Bombus saluted. Okay. You and Captain Akari will take the female. Mothball will handle the baby, and Trixie, you keep Screwball and Moonbeam out of danger. Normally, Trixie would have objected to being given the babysitting job, but since the task involved protecting her daughter, she was more than happy to oblige. Are we agreed, then? Twilight asked. Mantis nodded and shook the alicorn's hoof. Agreed. All right. Bombus cheered as he slapped Akari on the back. Go Team Dynamo! The captain growled. Call us that again and you'll be incinerated along with the worms. Focus, you two. The general commanded. Move out. Now. Twilight and the changelings flew to their prospective tatzelworms while Trixie hurried Moonbeam over to where Screwball was huddled. Twilight shot a beam at the alpha male to press him back into the ground. You said Chrysalis was able to manipulate him? She asked the general. With mind control, yes, Mantis said as he dodged the tendrils. I could cast it on him if he'd stay still long enough. Where's Fluttershy and her stare when you need her? Meanwhile, Akari and Bombus were calculating their attack on the female. So what do you think? The lieutenant asked. You take it from the left and I'll take it from the... I've got this, the captain grunted as she charged forward. Hey! Bombus called. What about the whole teamwork thing? Akari zapped the tatzelworm, who roared in response. She shot out her tendrils with lightning speed and caught the captain. The worm pulled her in while Akari fought against the black coils. Hey, back off, lady! Bombus shouted. The captain watched in awe as the incompetent lieutenant shot a series of beams at the tatzelworm's tendrils. She cried out in agony and released Akari. Bombus smirked at her. You were saying? She murmured. Thanks. Ah, well, the lieutenant said as he rubbed the back of his neck. You know. I have my moments. Shut up and help me finish this beast. Oh. Right. Gotcha. In the farthest corner of the castle, Moonbeam and Trixie were tending to Screwball, who was coughing, sneezing, wheezing, and shivering. Trixie took off her cape and draped it over the sick pony. Thanks, Screwball sniffed. Though that's oddly out of character for you. What can I say? Trixie shrugged. My compassion's back. I like this new you, Mom, Moonbeam said with a smile. Screwball groaned as she tried to sit up. I feel so pathetic. I should be helping. You're in no condition to fight, Trixie said as she laid her back down. Besides, Moonbeam said, turning to the battle, it looks like they've got it under control. And check out Uncle Mothy's moves. They watched as Mothball fearlessly faced the smaller tatzelworm. He was attempting his mind control spell, but the baby kept wriggling its head out of the way. The only decent shots he could get were to the lower half. After a while, the baby dove back into the ground. Moonbeam cheered and clapped her hooves. Then it reappeared through the wall behind Mothball, knocking him to the other side of the castle. Mothy! Screwball cried as the smaller tatzelworm slithered towards him. Trixie narrowed her eyes in determination. She was just starting to like her younger brother. She wasn't going to let him get eaten by a giant worm. Moonbeam, take care of Screwball for a sec, she commanded. Mummy's gotta help her brother. The filly nodded and stood protectively in front of the sick pony. Trixie didn't feel comfortable leaving her daughter practically unprotected, but she had no other choice. The others were too busy with the parents, and Mothball was barely conscious. She sprouted wings and flew to her brother's side. Hey, ugly! She shouted, shooting at the baby tatzelworm's head. Unfortunately, all that did was provoke the young monster. It opened its mouth and grabbed Trixie by the neck. The unicorn choked as the coils crushed her throat, cutting off her breath. Moonbeam gasped when she saw that her mother was about to become worm chow. Without thinking, she raced over to the baby tatzelworm and started shooting random beams at it. "You leave my mommy alone!" she cried. One beam hit the worm square in the eye, catching its attention. It let go of Trixie and turned to the filly. Moonbeam cowered in fear. It lashed out its head and smacked her across the room. "Moonbeam!" Trixie cried. The filly landed on the floor with a thud. She lifted her head weakly as the baby tatzelworm towered over her. It opened its mouth and was about to bring it down on the filly when Trixie slid between them. A change had come over the unicorn. Her coat was darkening and her eyes were literally blazing with green fire. She growled, showing her pointed teeth. "Big mistake!" Moonbeam screeched as her mother spontaneously combusted into a pillar of green flame, which made everyone, even the tatzelworms, turn their heads in shock. Mothball had regained consciousness, and his eyes were widening at the spectacle before him. They watched as Trixie grew in size, until she was at least 50 feet tall. Her blue coat burned away into black scales, her silky tail hardened into flesh, green spikes sprung up her back, her horn transforming to match them, her neck became long and slender, her muzzle stretched into a mighty snout, bones grew along her translucent wings, the pupils of her eyes shrunk into slits, and toes and claws grew from her hooves. When the fire faded away, in the place of the unicorn was an enormous, black and green dragon. Every pony and changeling gaped in astonishment. The tatzelworms were confused, but shook it off and roared at the large reptile. Trixie the dragon responded with a roar of fire breath. Twilight and the changeling soldiers quickly flew out of the flames' path. The fire had singed the tatzelworm family, but Trixie was not done. She lashed out her claws and scraped them all across the middle. They cried out in pain, but Trixie ignored them. She flapped her wings and rose into the air. When she came down, the tatzelworms found themselves beneath her feet. "No one," she snarled in a deep voice, "I repeat. No one hurts my daughter. Got that?" The tatzelworms whimpered like puppies. "Good." She lifted her feet and the giant worms slithered back into their holes. "And don't come back." The dragon snorted, smoke coming out of her nostrils. Green flames engulfed Trixie again, though not as elaborately as before. This time, she took her changeling form. She glanced around at all the flabbergasted faces. "What's everyone looking at Trixie for?" Mom." Moonbeam muttered. Trixie turned to face her daughter, and frowned to see that she was just as confused as the others. "Honey? What are you?" Then Trixie caught sight of her back and noticed her green shell and wings. She stared down at the rest of her body. "When did I?" she stammered. "What just happened?" Moonbeam jumped up and exclaimed, "You turned into a mega, fire-breathing dragon. And it was awesome." "No kidding." Bombus cheered. "I've never seen a changeling turn into a full-grown dragon before." "That's because no changeling has ever succeeded in doing so," Mantis explained, still in a daze. "And that truly was remarkable." Akari shrugged. "It was all right." But," Trixie stuttered. "I've never done anything like that before." "Never. I can barely change into anything outside of a pony." Mothball, who had risen from his place, approached his sister with a smile. "Maybe you just needed the right motivation." Trixie turned to her daughter, who had her hooves wrapped around her foreleg. "It was incredible." Moonbeam piped. "You're the coolest mom in the whole wide world." "You've certainly grown, Your Highness," Mantis complimented. "Well," Trixie chuckled as she brushed her mane to the side. "The great and powerful Trixie practices." "No. You've grown in height." Trixie glanced down at her long legs and then around her, only now noticing that she was a few inches taller than Twilight. "It's taken a while," the general said, "but it seems you've reached your full potential." He bowed his head. "You are truly the next ruler of the changelings." Akari and Bombus bowed too, which made Trixie blush. A groan from Screwball interrupted the moment. Mothball rushed to her side. We have to get her out of here, he said. We have to get back to the hive, Mantis argued as he levitated the box containing Chrysalis's heart. But Screwy's sick. And so is the queen. We won't be able to make it to both places quick enough, Twilight said. We're too far away, and my magic can't teleport all of us, and Screwball's too weak. Screwball lifted her heavy eyelids and called out in a raspy voice, Dad, help. Instantly, Discord materialized at her side. What happened? Screwy. Oh my gosh. You're green. Tatzelworm, Screwball grumbled. Tatzelworm. He glared at Mothball. Why was she around a tatzelworm? He turned and finally noticed the group of changelings. And who are these guys? No time to explain, Twilight said. First we need to get Screwball taken care of. Of course, Discord said as he gently took his daughter in his arms. Come on, sweetie. We're going home. He teleported them all to Screwball's room in the Castle of Chaos. Fluttershy. He called as he set Screwball in bed. Come quick. Fluttershy fluttered into the room and gasped. Screwy. What happened? Tatzelworm flew. Tatzelworm flew. Long story, Screwball coughed. Oh, you poor thing. I'll get you some. She paused when she saw the changelings. I'm sorry. We weren't properly introduced. These are soldiers from the hive, Mothball said, gesturing to the three changelings. And this, he grinned at Trixie, is my big sister. You know me better in this form, she said as she took her pony form. Trixie! Fluttershy exclaimed, rushing to give the unicorn a hug. It's so great to see you. Screwy told me who you really were. She glanced down at Moonbeam. Is this your daughter? She's adorable, but, why is she disguised like that? Her dad's iron will, Screwball grunted. The Pegasus eyes widened at Trixie. The incredible iron will? The Minotaur. Hey, don't judge Trixie, the unicorn said, pointing at Discord. Your taste in mates isn't exactly orthodox either. While I'm interested to hear this story as well, said Mantis, we must get the princess back to the hive at once. Discord, can you teleport us there? Twilight asked. The Draconequus turned to the changeling soldiers. Only if you let me come too. Mantis shook his head. That is out of the... I'm coming. He turned back to his daughter. You just rest now, sweetie. Daddy will be right back. Screwball grinned. Thanks, Daddy. Gee, I guess I might still need you after all. Discord returned her smile. I'd kiss you on the forehead, but you know. Get better soon, Mothball said, taking his fiancée's hoof. I'll take care of her, Fluttershy assured them. You boys go ahead. Discord nodded and raised his claw. With a snap of his fingers, he, the changelings and Twilight were transported to the hive, startling several changelings. A nurse changeling rushed out of the Queen's chamber. General Mantis. Thank the heavens you're back. We have the princess, Mantis declared, and the Queen's heart. How is she? The nurse's face grew grim. She's fading fast. If it wasn't for the heart in there, you would have already been too late. Author's note. Well, it couldn't have been just any monster. Otherwise, Screwy would have taken it out in a jiff. Then I realized one tatzelworm wouldn't have been hard enough for 6 beings with magic. We're almost at the end. Just a few more chapters, and they are going to require a lot of attention. End author's note. End chapter 17. Unleashed.